Hey Dragon Ball fans, this is Poohead189, and today we're doing a technique breakdown on the most well-known and iconic technique in probably all of manga and anime history, the Kamehameha wave, also known as the Kamehameha technique, turtle destruction wave, or just the Kamehameha. Introduced in chapter 14 of the manga, and the 8th overall episode of Dragon Ball, the technique's concept was first created after Toriyama had the idea for an attack with the word kame in it, and he practiced a few hand motions himself before he got it down. Toriyama's wife, Nachi Mikami, told him he should use the name of an ancient Hawaiian king, Kamehameha, because it would be easy to remember, and thus the legendary technique was made. As everyone knows, the Kamehameha is performed by reciting the name, the practitioner oftentimes placing both hands out before them, and always pulling their hands to their side to cup them before they finish speaking the word Kamehameha, and then shoving their cupped hands out, their hands acting as the barrel of the beam. And I need to note that it appears as though the practitioner cups both of their hands on the side of their dominant hand, as out of the 67 times it is used in the manga, only 2 or 3 times does the user ever cup their hands on their left side. It's kind of hard to tell at times, but around 64 to 65 of the Kamehamehas out of the 67 are on the right side, and so we can probably surmise that it is due to them using their dominant hand. We also need to note a discrepancy in the Kamehameha's coloring. As everyone knows, the Kamehameha is popularly blue in color, with a white or light center. However, though everyone thinks of it as blue, in the full color version of the original manga, the Kamehameha wave is yellow. Just as I noted in the video I made on the Gallic gun, a technique is generally colored yellow in the full color original manga to show that it is a powerful attack, other than for a few key exceptions, like the Kaioken technique always being crimson in color, even in the full color version of the manga. The Kamehameha wave appears to be your usual destructive attack, either striking, disintegrating, or burning the opponent it hits, depending on their relative strength. It might also be up to the user on what effect it has, but that's up for debate. Generally, it's due to the strength of the opponent on what the effect of the beam is. The wave, however, does have a very effective concussive force, and its pushing power is significant. Multiple times throughout the series, Goku uses the Kamehameha almost like a jet engine, firing the beam away from the target and using its push to launch himself and others towards a destination. He uses it to do his final attack against King Piccolo, he fires it through his feet to hit Piccolo Jr., and during the Red Ribbon Army saga, when he, Krillin, and Bulma were trapped underwater in a broken submarine, he even uses it to launch all 3 of them and the submarine itself out from the bottom of the ocean all the way to the surface within seconds. Now, in-universe, the creator of the technique was Master Roshi, or Muten Roshi. It was a technique that took him 50 years to master, though it's difficult to tell when that was. His own master, Mutaito, was the creator of the Mafabu, or Evil Containment Wave. I bring this up because it's ambiguous what sort of ki-based techniques Mutaito knew, or how prevalent ki attacks were during the wars against King Piccolo. The Kamehameha taking Roshi 50 years likely meant humanity had just barely scratched the surface of utilizing ki for combat. And Roshi likely started from nothing on that front, or at most with a very rudimentary understanding. It's possible he was creating the technique during the battles against King Piccolo's minions, but we really are not given that sort of information. Now, to his credit, Roshi did not make a basic ki move, contrary to what one might think, despite it being the first usage of ki in the series proper, and something many characters have replicated, and something that most people just associate as a basic ki attack, being the Kamehameha. The wave itself is actually a fairly powerful maneuver, and it's quite unique actually as well. It's unknown what sort of properties the Kamehameha has that make it different from your average beam of ki, but during the early tournament arcs, various characters had become experienced enough or skilled enough to be able to almost completely nullify the Kamehameha, and yet it appears as if they could not replicate that with other ki blasts, like the Dodon Ray, the Tri-Beam, also known as the Kikoho, or any of the Demon Clan's ki techniques. There was something about the Kamehameha that made it different at its core, and that's quite strange, because one huge benefit of the technique is the ubiquity of it, and the variety of ways one could utilize it, at least for a fighter that is extremely familiar with the technique, like Goku. Due to his skill in battle and learning the technique as a small child, Goku is able to use the Kamehameha in ways that make him stretch the definition of what makes a Kamehameha. From firing one off from his feet to hit Piccolo, to firing it one-handed against King Piccolo, to creating 2 floating orbs of energy underwater and firing them off as singular missiles against Final Form Frieza. He also developed a Super Kamehameha, a sub-form of the wave he uses to defeat Piccolo Jr.'s explosive demon wave during the final match of the 23rd tournament. And also, we can surmise that whenever Goku uses a Kamehameha after that, it's probably the Super Kamehameha, he just doesn't call it that. However, as early Dragon Ball progresses into Z, various characters give some good information on who can use it most effectively. During Goku's match with Tien in the finals of the 22nd tourney, Krillin says that Goku's Kamehameha is incredible compared to others, and during the finals of the 21st tournament, Roshi, under the guise of Jackie Chun, believes his Kamehameha will be far superior to Goku's, even though the two fighters are at relatively equal strength. This seems to imply that one does not simply learn the Kamehameha and then perform it, but that depending on how talented a fighter is, or on how much they have practiced it, the wave will be far more effective. So there's always room to grow, which means if you use a Kamehameha, you obviously are using one, but someone else who's practiced it more, even if they're maybe weaker than you, might still have a better Kamehameha than yours. When Piccolo, newly fused with Kami, fought Imperfect Cell, and Cell used the Kamehameha on the Namekian, Piccolo notes that the reason the Kamehameha was not very strong was because it was taken from Goku's cells in the Saiyan saga, and so that means that since Goku has had 4 to 5 years of training it since then, his would now be stronger, presumably even if his power level was equal to Cell's. Of course, this gives us some insight into Cell's transformations. As Imperfect Cell merely uses the wave to intimidate Piccolo, Perfect Cell's Kamehameha is extremely advanced, which showcases that not only is he more powerful, but his skills as a fighter has increased quite a bit. In fact, the Kamehameha is Cell's go-to technique in his perfect form, and it seems to be Super Saiyan 2 Gohan's as well. Despite the fact that techniques like Masenko have been historically used by Gohan more, he matches Cell's Kamehameha with his own, twice. One could say that the reason Gohan's first Kamehameha did not kill Cell, and the reason he needed Goku's spirit to help him in the second wave, during the famous father-son Kamehameha, is because Gohan is not as practiced in the Kamehameha like Goku, but that would also beg the question on why he used the technique in the first place, instead of another one he could perform better. And again, the reason I'm speaking on them and not Goku is because generally Goku's Kamehameha is considered extremely advanced. Now let's get back to early Dragon Ball, where we have another example of a less advanced Kamehameha. During the 22nd tourney, when Krillin fought Chaozu, Krillin was in dire straits, as Chaozu was able to float in the air using his Bukujutsu, or flying technique, and continually rain down ki blasts with his Dodon Ray, or Dodon Pa. And Krillin decided he needed to try to use the Kamehameha to save himself, even though he had never performed the Kamehameha before. And though he was able to successfully implement the technique, it was untrained and not very advanced, and so it did not end the fight as Krillin likely hoped, showcasing, as I said earlier, yet again that even though Krillin was slightly stronger than Chaozu, at least according to the Daizenshuu, a Kamehameha's effectiveness is not only one's power level, but how well trained or skilled in the technique the user is. In contrast, though Goku is able to grasp the technique quickly, and is the most skilled user of the Kamehameha wave, Master Roshi still has utilized the technique the longest, and has made a few advancements of his own. Most notably is Master Roshi's full power form, or max power form, where Roshi's muscle mass and even height increases. And while one could make the argument that that does not have anything to do with the Kamehameha wave specifically, he only utilizes this form when he is about to perform a large Kamehameha, and never directly employs it in hand-to-hand combat. That, coupled with the fact that Yamcha, when first describing the technique in Chapter 14, talks about how the Kamehameha takes the latent energy from a practitioner's body and concentrates it, while Roshi had just utilized his max power form, which makes it seem very likely that Roshi's max power form is simply a way to draw more of his own power into a Kamehameha to make it more destructive, rather than being a simple power boost. This is also in contrast to how the Kamehameha works normally, as instead of the user increasing their strength to increase the technique, generally we see the usage of the technique increasing strength, like when Goku performed the Kamehameha against Raditz and his power level went up from 416 to 924. I would also be remiss not to mention that when one uses a Kamehameha, saying the wave's name verbally does seem to have some effect on its usage to some degree, even if it's possible to do it without saying Kamehameha. However, the most important part of the ending is the last ha. Some people think saying the name is sort of like counting to 5, giving one time to charge the attack as like a powering up ritual, and while this might be somewhat true in the anime, in the manga, it's a different story. You see, in pretty much every usage of the Kamehameha, the Kamehameha portion of the name is all said in a single panel, and usually, with a large or significant Kamehameha, there is a panel or two between the Kamehameha and the last ha, which implies the majority of the powering up required for the technique is between the main body of the phrase and the final ha. Now lastly, due to how simple yet effective the technique is, it is often used in tandem with other techniques, most famously when Goku used it with his triple Kaioken and 4 times Kaioken, or when Goku used the instant transmission and Kamehameha against Cell. And also we should not forget that it is also possible to bend the Kamehameha beam like you can do with other techniques, as Goku does against King Piccolo, and he bent it out of the way of Piccolo's block. Okay guys, that's all I have to say today about the Kamehameha. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please like, share, and subscribe if you think I deserve it. And I always welcome comments. You know I do. I love reading y'all's comments. And I hope you all have a lovely day. All right. Thanks, guys.